Hello and welcome. I am Karen Robbie and I'm here with Eric Mackey.
Hello.
We are trainers with the Massachusetts PBIS Academy. And the information and content you'll be hearing about today comes from the Northeast PBIS network, as well as the Center for PBIS, the national network. Speaking of PBIS, we should make sure that everybody knows that PBIS stands for Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. And when you see the acronym SWPBIS, that indicates that we're talking about it at a school-wide level. Our goal for today is to give you just a brief overview of PBIS as an effective framework for your school. Your school is about to embark on a comprehensive implementation journey. It is important to note that this is only the first step of that journey. Your school PBIS leadership team will be engaged in ongoing training and coaching to support their understanding. And over time, as their capacity strengthens, they will be able to provide the rest of the school staff with more training and professional development.
Many schools are eager to see changes in student behavior right away.
Yeah, and aren't we all? However, we should not expect to see significant changes in student outcomes until some implementation is underway for a little while. Most schools start to see a few minor changes in the first year, but the broader, more comprehensive changes in the school climate and culture are noticed later than that.
So you're probably wondering what PBIS is.
Yeah, and it's not easy to capture with a simple definition. So let's get started on finding out more. Think about your school as an organization, and effective organizations need to have some common language, experiences, as well as a common vision or value system. All of those ideas need to be embraced with some quality leadership. In a school community, when those are all in place, you can develop a positive school-wide climate for all of your stakeholders. Continuing to try to narrow down the definition, think about PBIS as a framework that your school uses to determine which types of evidence-based interventions are going to be implemented so that desired outcomes for students are able to be achieved. And the key here is that you want to be thinking about what needs to be done for all students to be successful.
Still not quite sure what PBIS is? That's fine. We'll unpack that for you in a bit.
So think for a moment about a student that you know that has exhibited concerning behavior. And then think a little bit about how the adults responded to that student's behavior.
You may think that it depends on the student's behavior or on the staff, but my guess is that the response is probably on the side of corrective and possibly punishing.
Yeah. Typically, what we do is we provide that initial aversive consequence. We say no. We take a privilege away. We send a student to a think seat, right? Some student behavior is going to improve with that, but other student behaviors are going to continue. And as an educator, I want that situation to end because I find that aversive too. So if behavior still doesn't improve, we
get even tougher and we give additional or more aversive consequences. We might repeat the word no louder. We might move closer to the student. We might start leaning towards sending the student out of the class and start filling out that paperwork. We might threaten with a bottom line if you don't do this or else. And we might start considering in-school detention.
Yeah. And again, with this, some student behavior will improve. Other students, however, will continue. And then what?
So we get even tougher. We might increase the intensity, the frequency, or the duration of our aversive consequences. We might start leaning on zero tolerance policies. We might start getting involved in physical movement or physical restraint. We might start leaning towards out of school suspension.
Yeah. And the behavior continues to escalate in intensity, frequency, duration, getting to a point where teaching and learning is not happening as effectively as we would like it to. Plus, there are many additional longer term impacts that you can see here.
And who knows, those strategies might actually be encouraging that behavior to happen.
Right. So when getting tougher does not work, we know that that does not work. Instead, we want to think about teaching pro-social behavior and letting students know when they're getting it right.
Many think that this is where we start talking about acknowledgement and ticket systems.
Yeah, and those certainly can be helpful tools, but that's strictly a tool. The real power is teaching expected behavior to students.
Sounds good, right? But when are you going to find time to do that? When you're teaching.
Well, exactly. And academics content takes so much time. We know that, along with a long list of other responsibilities that schools are expected to do. We never have enough time.
We certainly can't work any harder or more than we already do. So we need to be really efficient with our time. And thankfully, the research indicates that PBIS can actually help us out with that. What we see with PBIS is that we see reductions in office discipline referrals, reductions in suspensions, and reductions in reported bullying. So you're spending less time managing behaviors, and they're spending more time in class. So we actually get the outcomes that we want, like better pro-social behavior, improved test scores, improved climate within the school. So again, you're saving time.
Yeah, and then, so this is where I'm often asked by schools, okay, great, sign me up. Is there a curriculum to follow? And the answer to that is no. PBIS, remember we talked about at the start, is a framework. You and your school and your team want to start by focusing on what are the outcomes, what are the things you're hoping for your students to walk out of your school with, both academically and socially. Then you want to use data to help make the decisions around which types of practices are going to be implemented, and thinking about your practices along a continuum of both instruction and prevention. Then you want to invest your time and energy in developing systems to help ensure that all of this is going to actually work and be implemented as intended. Finally, think about the culture and the context of your school community. PBIS is meant to be adapted to your school. It's not going to be the same everywhere, nor should it be. You want to constantly be talking with stakeholders, having input from multiple different sources, build the relationships that you need so that you can create a framework that's going to work and match the needs of your school. Additionally, or within that framework, you want to start developing proactive and preventative continuum of behavior support, in which tier 1, which is this green triangle, represents what's available to all staff, all students, and in all settings. What is it that everybody experiences? Then tier 2 are for the groups of students that need a little bit more intensity, a little more specialized or differentiated support in order to be successful. Typically, if a school is implementing PBIS at a Tier 1 level well, only about 15% of students would need Tier 2 supports. And then finally, Tier 3 is for supports that are truly individualized. Students have received some extra support at a Tier 2 level, but it's still not quite enough for them to be successful. Ideally, you want this to be no more than 5% of your students. And then all along, however, green is there for everybody. Green is always in place and really solid, because otherwise, as you build Tier 2 and Tier 3, you're going to wind up with an inverted triangle or a volcano.
Sounds great, right? But where do we get started?
And that's a great question. And it can be a lot to figure out, because this is a big shift in ways that schools often are operating. Think of these are your 10 getting started steps, and your PBIS team is going to receive additional training and coaching support in order to implement all these different 10 getting started steps. It takes well over a year in order to get through even just the first 5 to 6 steps. But over time, you'll get there.
And first things first, you need to make sure that you have a team. Don't go it alone. So as we wrap up with this mini lesson here, let's have some food for thought here. Consider these questions. Is improving student behavior a priority for your school? What are the current strengths in your school for supporting appropriate student behavior? What are some needs that your school has with regards to supporting appropriate student behavior? How can PBIS help meet those needs? And what do you still want to know about PBIS?
Those are some great places to start your thinking. And if you're watching this with others, we would encourage you to talk with one another a little bit about them.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, for more information, please feel free to check anypbis.org, apbis.org, or pbis.org. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.